I have sat on this bench for over 40 years. I have seen every kind of person walk through that door: rich people, poor people, scared people, proud people. But every now and then someone walks in who makes you stop breathing for a second. Not because they frighten you, because they remind you exactly why this room exists in the first place. And that day she walked in wearing more money than most people in this city earn in a year. She looked around my courtroom like it was a parking lot, like it was an inconvenience, like she had somewhere better to be, and I thought to myself, this woman has no idea what is about to happen to her. If you believe that no amount of money should buy you the right to hurt someone and walk away laughing, then you are in the right place today. Have you ever watched someone's entire sense of power collapse in real time? Because I am about to show you exactly what that looks like. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications, because the story I am about to tell you is one I still think about when I close my eyes at night. You are going to want to see every single second of this. Her name was Scarlett Morrow, 23 years old, only child of Richard Morrow, the founder and CEO of Morrow Energy Group, one of the largest private oil and gas companies in the southeastern United States. Forbes had estimated Richard Morrow's personal net worth at somewhere between $900 million and $1.2 billion. I am not saying that to impress you. I am saying it because you need to understand the world this young woman lived in. A world where every problem had a price tag. A world where the word no had simply never applied to her. She walked into my courtroom at 9:14 on a Tuesday morning wearing a cream-colored Chanel blazer that I was later told cost over $4,000. On her wrist was a Cartier love bracelet, gold, the kind that people wait months to buy. Her bag, sitting on the table in front of her like it was a centerpiece at a dinner party, was a Birkin. Hermes, Togo leather, burnt orange. I have been around long enough to know that bag cost more than the annual salary of every single officer in that courtroom combined. Her attorney, and I want you to notice she had a private attorney, not a public defender, was a man named Gerald Finch from the firm Finch, Holloway and Briggs, $350 an hour, minimum. She had come prepared, she had come confident, and she had come completely wrong. Before I tell you what was on that charge sheet, I need you to meet someone else. I need you to meet the other man in that courtroom, because every story like this has two sides, and the second side is the one that matters most. His name was Marcus Webb, 67 years old. He had served in the United States Army for 22 years, including 2 tours in Vietnam between 1971 and 1973. He came home with a Purple Heart, a hearing aid in his left ear, and shrapnel in his right knee that still showed up on x-rays 50 years later. After the military, Marcus spent over 2 decades as a custodian at Franklin Elementary School on Prospect Avenue. The kids called him Mr. Marcus. Teachers brought him holiday cards. He had been named Employee of the Year in 2009, 2013, and 2016. He retired in 2021 on a fixed pension of $1,412 a month. Marcus was raising his 9-year-old granddaughter, Layla, alone. His daughter, Layla's mother, had passed away 18 months earlier from stage 4 ovarian cancer. Layla's father had not been in the picture since the girl was 2 years old. So it was just Marcus and Layla in a 1-bedroom apartment on Crestwood Drive, making it work on $1,400 a month and a whole lot of love. Layla was in the 3rd grade. She had a gap in her front teeth and a backpack shaped like a turtle. I know that because Marcus told me himself. And when he told me, his voice was steady, because men like Marcus have survived things that would break most of us, and they do not crumble easily. On September 14th at 3:22 in the afternoon, Marcus Webb was driving his 2004 Honda Civic north on Meridian Avenue toward Franklin Elementary to pick up Layla from school. The weather was clear, the road was dry. Marcus had the green light at the intersection of Meridian and Crossfield Boulevard. He entered the intersection at approximately 31 miles per hour, which is well within the legal 35-mile-per-hour limit, And that is when Scarlett Morrow's white Lamborghini Urus, traveling east on Crossfield at an estimated 64 miles per hour in a 35 zone, ran the red light and slammed directly into the driver's side of his car. The impact was catastrophic. Marcus's Civic was pushed 43 feet across the intersection. Both driver's side doors were destroyed. The airbag deployed and hit Marcus hard enough to break 2 ribs and fracture his left collarbone. His left wrist was shattered. Specifically, he suffered a comminuted fracture of the distal radius, which is a medical way of saying the bone broke into multiple pieces. He was transported by ambulance to Providence Memorial Hospital and spent 6 days in the ICU. His surgery lasted 4 hours and 30 minutes. He now has 8 titanium pins in his left hand and limited grip strength that his doctors say will likely never fully return. The hand he used to wave good morning to every kid who walked through the doors of Franklin Elementary for 23 years. And Scarlett Morrow, she did not stop. She drove away. I want you to sit with that for a moment. She drove away and left a 67-year-old veteran bleeding and unconscious in an intersection. She drove away and left a 9-year-old girl waiting alone outside her school for a grandfather who never came. Layla waited for 45 minutes before a teacher noticed and called the office. Marcus's emergency contact was activated at 4:09 p.m., which is when they finally reached his neighbor, a Mrs. Dorothy Franklin, who then had to go pick up Layla and explain to a 9-year-old that her grandfather was in the hospital. That is what Scarlett Morrow left behind her. Now, before I take you into what happened inside that courtroom, I have to ask you something. Think about where you are right now. You are watching this because somewhere inside you, you know that justice should be blind, that the color of your wallet should not change the outcome of your choices. If that is something you believe, I want you to prove it right now. I dare you to drop a comment below with the word justice and see how many people in this community feel the same way you do, because I am going to need you to remember your answer when you see how this woman behaved in my courtroom. She walked in like she was doing us a favor. That is the only way I can describe it. Gerald Finch, her attorney, had submitted a pre-hearing motion the week before arguing that the charges were excessive and requesting that the hit-and-run felony be reduced to a misdemeanor based on what he called extenuating circumstances. I rejected that motion. When Finch announced this in front of Scarlett, she turned to him with this small, bored smile and said, "Then we'll appeal." Just like that, we'll appeal. Like this was a hotel room she didn't like, and she was simply requesting a different one. Officer Daniel Reyes, badge number 4471 from the Providence Traffic Division, was the first to present evidence. He had been on duty the night of the incident and responded to the scene at 3:31 p.m. on September 14th. He walked me through the police report, case number TR 2023-09-4412. The skid marks from Scarlett's Lamborghini began approximately 61 feet before the point of impact, which tells you she saw what was happening and still could not stop in time because she was going 64 miles per hour, 64, in a school zone adjacent to a 35 limit intersection. When Officer Reyes presented the dashcam footage, and yes, there was dashcam footage from a commercial delivery truck that had been stopped at the light, the courtroom went very quiet. You could see it all clearly. Marcus entering the intersection on green. The white Lamborghini blowing through the red light at full speed. The collision, the sound. And then, the Lamborghini continuing east on Crossfield Boulevard and disappearing from view. I watched Scarlett watching the footage. She did not flinch. She looked at her nails. I am not exaggerating. She looked at her nails while that video played. I asked her, "Ms. Morrow, do you understand what you are watching?" She looked up at me slowly, like I had interrupted something important, and she said, "Judge, I've already reviewed this with my attorney." I said, "That is not what I asked you." There was a pause. Finch put his hand on her arm. She shrugged it off, and then she said very clearly, "I don't really see the point of this exercise." The courtroom made a sound. It wasn't loud. It was more like a collective exhale of disbelief. The kind of sound a room makes when someone has just said something that should not have been said out loud. I asked Officer Reyes to continue. He presented the cell phone records that had been obtained via subpoena. At 3:19 p.m. on September 14th, 3 minutes before the accident, Scarlett Morrow had sent a text message. At 3:21 p.m., 1 minute before the accident, she had placed a phone call. The call was still active at the time of the collision. She was on the phone when she ran that red light. She was on the phone when she hit a 67-year-old veteran at 64 miles per hour, and she was on the phone when she drove away. I looked at her. "You were on a phone call during this entire incident, Ms. Morrow?" She tilted her head slightly. "My attorney has advised me not to answer specific questions about—" "You don't need your attorney to answer that," I said. "The phone records are right here. I am asking you if you understand what they show." She looked at me for a long moment, and then, and I want you to hear this clearly, she said, "Judge, with respect, I think we've established what happened. The question is how we move forward constructively." Move forward constructively. She spoke to me like I was a member of her staff, like I was someone she had hired to manage a problem for her. I took a breath. I have taken a lot of breaths over 40 years. This was one of the deeper ones. At this point, I want to bring in Marcus Webb's testimony because it needs to be heard. He came to the stand slowly. His left arm was still in a partial brace. He sat down carefully, adjusted the microphone, and he thanked me for the opportunity to speak. He thanked me. After everything that had happened to him, he thanked me for the chance to say his piece. That is the kind of man Marcus Webb is. He said, "Your Honor, I have faced things in my life that I wouldn't wish on anyone. I've seen things overseas that changed me, but through all of that, I always believed if I did the right thing would find me back. I wasn't doing anything wrong on that road. I had the light. I was going the right speed. I was going to pick up my granddaughter." He paused there just for a second. "She waited outside alone for 45 minutes. She's 9. She didn't know if I was dead." He said that last part without drama, without tears, just as a statement of fact. And somehow that made it heavier than if he had wept the entire time. I asked Marcus how Layla was doing now. He said, "She asks me sometimes before I drive anywhere if I'm going to come back. A 9-year-old shouldn't have that thought." The courtroom was completely still. I turned to Scarlett Morrow. I wanted to see if any of that had reached her. She was looking at the table in front of her. Her expression had not changed. Her attorney was writing something on a legal pad. And then my clerk handed me a manila envelope. And that is when this case became something else entirely. Now here is the part of the story that you have been waiting for, the part that people who were in that courtroom that day still talk about. But before I get there, I want to ask you something. If what you've heard so far has already made your blood boil, what do you think you are going to feel when I tell you what was in that envelope? Are you sure you are ready? Because I need you to stay with me now. Hit that like button so more people can see this story, and whatever you do, do not click away. This next part changed everything. The envelope had been brought to my attention by Detective Karen Sousa, Case Investigations Unit, badge number 7209. She had been monitoring Scarlett Morrow's social media activity as part of the ongoing investigation. What she found, what she printed out and placed in that envelope, was a series of Instagram stories posted by the account Scarlett Morrow Life, which at the time had 182,000 followers. The first story had been posted at 7:44 p.m. on September 14th. That is 4 hours and 22 minutes after the accident. 4 hours after Marcus Webb was in surgery. The image was a selfie. Scarlett was in what appeared to be a rooftop bar, holding a champagne flute, wearing a sequined top. The caption read, "Healing from a stressful afternoon el all." There was a sunglasses emoji. There was a champagne emoji. 182,000 followers had seen that image. The second story had been posted at 9:11 p.m. that same night. It was a text post, white letters on a black background. It read, "When old people shouldn't be on the road, but somehow that's your problem, protect your peace." There was a laughing emoji at the end. It had been screenshot by multiple followers and reposted before it was deleted. Detective Sousa had archived it at 9:47 p.m., 36 minutes after it was posted. I read both of those posts out loud in my courtroom, every single word. I wanted there to be no misunderstanding about what they said and what they meant. Scarlett Morrow, for the first time since she had walked through my door, looked uncomfortable. Not guilty, not remorseful, uncomfortable, like she had been caught doing something embarrassing at a party, not like she had mocked a man she had left bleeding in the street. Finch said, "Your Honor, those posts were made without full understanding of the situation and were subsequently deleted." I held up my hand. "Counselor, I will hear from you in a moment." I looked at Scarlett. "Did you post these?" A pause. "I posted something. I didn't specifically mean you posted on the same evening that Mr. Webb was in surgery for a broken arm and 2 broken ribs, that old people should not be on the road. Is that correct?" She said nothing. "And you captioned a picture of yourself drinking champagne with the phrase, 'healing from a stressful afternoon,' on the same afternoon that a 67-year-old grandfather was life-flighted to Providence Memorial." Still nothing. "Ms. Morrow," I said, "what exactly did you find stressful about that afternoon?" And this is the moment the entire courtroom will never forget. Scarlett Morrow looked directly at me, and she said, "Judge, I understand you're doing your job here, but people like you have never had to deal with the kind of pressure that comes with my family's situation. You don't understand what it's like. People like you. I want you to understand what happened in that room after those 3 words. It was like someone had turned the temperature up by 20 degrees. The bailiff, Officer Terrence Mills, shifted his weight. The court reporter stopped typing for a second. Someone in the gallery actually said, 'Oh,' out loud. 'People like me,' I repeated. 'I mean no offense,' she said, though her tone suggested she meant every offense available. 'I am going to be honest with you. In 40 years, I have been called things from that bench that I would not repeat in polite company. But there is something particular about being dismissed, about someone looking at you and deciding that your entire life, your entire experience, your entire authority is less than theirs simply because of what family you were born into.' I felt something in that moment that I have trained myself over 4 decades to channel rather than release. I felt it go cold inside me, and cold is far more dangerous than hot. I said very quietly, 'We're going to take a 15-minute recess.' But before we could, Detective Sousa raised her hand. She said, 'Your Honor, there is one more thing.' She looked almost reluctant to say it, almost. What she revealed next was not in the original charge sheet. It had come in through a separate investigation, one that had been triggered by the subpoenaed phone records. That phone call Scarlett Morrow was on at the moment of the accident, the one that was still active when she drove away, had been to a man named Troy Haverfield, 38 years old, a permit expediter with Morrow Energy Group. The reason Detective Sousa's unit had become interested in Mr. Haverfield was because a routine review of his financial records showed 17 wire transfers from a Morrow Energy subsidiary account totaling $341,000 over 14 months. Transfers that had no corresponding invoice, no contract, and no record in the company's public filings. The call logs showed Scarlett and Haverfield had been in contact over 40 times in the previous 90 days. The Federal Financial Crimes Division had been notified. A parallel investigation was now open under federal jurisdiction. The hit-and-run case had just become the door to something much, much larger. Finch went pale, literally pale. He asked for an immediate recess to confer with his client. I allowed it. When they came back, Scarlett's composure was gone, not in a dramatic way, not in tears, but in the way that happens when someone realizes the ground they were standing on was not actually solid. She was still holding her Birkin bag, but her knuckles were white. If you are still with me right now, I want you to know that you are part of something. You are watching real accountability unfold the way it is supposed to. The community that gathers around stories like this, the people who refuse to look away, they are the reason stories like this get told. Leave a comment below if you have ever watched someone powerful finally face consequences, because you are not alone. And the best part, we are not done yet. I called the court back to order, and that is when the door at the back of the courtroom opened. Richard Morrow walked in. I recognized him. Most people in that room recognized him. He is a big man, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, the kind of face that belongs on a magazine cover or a boardroom wall. He was wearing a charcoal suit, no tie. He was flanked by two men I did not recognize, both of whom I later learned were personal legal counsel, separate from Gerald Finch. He did not sit in the gallery. He walked to the front of the room, made eye contact with his daughter, and then turned to me. "Your Honor," he said, "I apologize for the interruption. I asked to be allowed entry because I felt it was important that I be present, and I want to say something on behalf of my family, if you'll permit me." I permitted him. What Richard Morrow said next was not what anyone in that room expected. I certainly did not expect it. He stood straight and he said, "Mr. Webb, I understand you're here today. I want to say directly to you that what happened to you was wrong. It was inexcusable. No person should go through what you went through, and no grandfather should have his granddaughter left waiting on a curb because of someone else's recklessness." He paused. "My daughter made choices that I cannot defend. I am not here to defend them. I am here because I want this court to know that I will not be using the resources of my family or my company to shield her from the consequences of what she did." Scarlett said, "Dad." He didn't look at her. "No, Scarlett, not this time. Not." It was one of the most stunning moments I have experienced in 4 decades on this bench, because it was not a legal strategy. It was a father standing in a courtroom and refusing to be his child's escape route. I have seen plenty of rich parents try to buy their children out of trouble. I have almost never seen one choose the other path. But I want to be clear about something. Richard Morrow's statement, however honest it was, did not change what I was about to do. Accountability does not get lighter because a parent finally shows up. If anything, watching that exchange told me something important. Scarlett Morrow had grown up with a father who knew right from wrong, which means she had been taught it. She had simply decided it did not apply to her. I looked at Scarlett for a long moment before I spoke. I looked at the case file. I looked at the photographs of Marcus Webb's destroyed car, the X-rays of his shattered wrist, the printed Instagram posts, the federal wire transfer records. And I thought about Layla, 9 years old, asking her grandfather before every car trip if he was coming back. I thought about that for a few seconds, and then I was ready. I said, "Ms. Morrow, please stand." She stood. She held her Birkin bag at her side. Her attorney stood beside her. I said, "I have been on this bench since before you were born. I have seen wealth, and I have seen poverty, and I have seen everything in between. And in all of that time, the thing that has never failed to cause the most damage, more than any crime, more than any specific act of violence, is the belief that some people simply do not have to answer for what they do. That belief is the most dangerous thing I encounter in this courtroom. And you, Ms. Morrow, walked in here today drenched in it." She did not look away. I will give her that. She kept her eyes on me. "You ran a red light at 64 miles per hour while on a phone call. You struck a United States Army veteran with enough force to shatter his wrist and break his ribs. You left him in that intersection and drove away. You then spent that evening at a rooftop bar, posting celebratory content to social media and mocking elderly drivers. You appeared in this court today with an attitude that suggested this proceeding was beneath you. And when I pressed you on it, you told me that people like me don't understand the pressure of your situation." I paused. "I understand your situation perfectly, Ms. Morrow, perhaps better than you do right now." I delivered the sentence slowly and clearly so that every word landed. For the charge of felony hit and run with serious bodily injury, guilty. Maximum under statute, 18 months suspended with 2 years formal probation, 180 days of mandatory community service, not general community service, specific community service. Every hour of those 180 days would be served at the Providence Veterans Resource Center on Galloway Street under the direct supervision of their program coordinator, assisting elderly and disabled veterans with transportation, errands, physical therapy appointments, and daily needs. Every week. No exceptions for travel, social events, family obligations, or any other engagement. The Cartier bracelet and the Hermes bag might go to Paris, but Scarlett Morrow would be on Galloway Street. Additionally, she was required to pay restitution to Marcus Webb in the full amount of his medical expenses, lost wages, and an additional sum to cover the cost of after-school care for Layla for the next 2 years, given that Marcus's physical limitations now affected his ability to drive and care for her without assistance. The total restitution figure came to $87,420, payable in full within 60 days. Her driver's license was suspended for 2 years, effective immediately. Her Lamborghini Urus, which had been impounded following the accident, would remain in police custody pending the conclusion of the federal financial investigation. I also issued a formal judicial referral to the Federal Financial Crimes Division, documenting the wire transfer evidence presented in my courtroom. What happened with that referral was beyond my jurisdiction, but I made sure it was on record. And finally, I required Scarlett Morrow to write a personal letter of apology to Marcus Webb, reviewed and approved by my clerk, and to read it aloud to him in this courtroom at her first probation check-in date, not emailed, not delivered through attorneys, read aloud, in person, while he sat and listened. Scarlett stood very still through all of it. Her attorney was writing rapidly. Her father, in the back of the room, had his hands clasped in front of him and his head slightly bowed. And when I was done speaking, I looked at Scarlett and I said one more thing. You said that people like me don't understand the pressure of your situation. I want to tell you something. I grew up in a house where my father worked 12-hour days and we still struggled to keep the lights on. I have seen more pain in this room than most people see in a lifetime, and I have learned something from all of it. The people who are most worth listening to are never the loudest in the room. They are never the ones wearing the most expensive coat. They are the ones who show up quietly, tell the truth, and still find something to be grateful for. I looked toward Marcus. Mr. Webb, you are a remarkable man. Your granddaughter is lucky to have you. Marcus nodded. His eyes were bright. He said, Thank you, Your Honor. Scarlett was led out by her attorney. She passed her father on the way out. He said something to her quietly. I do not know what it was, but she slowed her step for just a moment and something in her face shifted. I cannot tell you what that shift meant. I can only hope it was the beginning of something real. Justice, at its core, is not about punishment. I want to be clear about that before I close. It is about balance. When someone disrupts the balance and when someone takes something from another person through carelessness or arrogance or selfishness, the job of this court is to restore as much of that balance as possible. You cannot give Marcus Webb his unbroken wrist back. You cannot give Layla back the 45 minutes she spent alone on that curb wondering if her grandfather was alive. There are things this bench cannot undo, but what we can do, what we must do, is make clear that the disruption had a cost, that the world noticed, that the world refused to look away.